Hey, and welcome back. If you didn't pick up from the title of this video and also the thumbnail, this video more than likely will have some triggers for some people. So it is up to your own personal discretion whether or not you continue through. Now, we're going to be talking about hitting children and the laws in regards to that, and the surprising fact that apparently no laws have been changed, virtually changed, like essentially nothing's really changed since 1892 in terms of, well, punishing children. And I thought that when I was younger, now I grew up in the 90s, I'm in my 30s right now, and I thought that that changed in the 90s. Apparently, the only change happened was in the early 2000s, and I thought it happened a lot earlier. Now, again, there may be some trigger warnings, but what we're going to do is we're just going to get right into this and we're going to go take a look at the news article from the Globe and Mail. So, in the Globe and Mail, they wrote that hitting children is still legal in Canada. These lawmakers want to change that. Now, the lawmakers, I believe there's a conservative in there, a liberal, an NDP, so, kind of all across the spectrum. But with that being said, when I was reading through this article, there was a few things. For example, there's a teacher who was teaching their students about different things, and they came across this, and they were surprised on what the law says on what they can do, because, like I said, the law has not changed. Um, so, you can go over and you can take a look at this article. There's quite a bit in there. I'm not going to get it there. Believe there's some hyperlinks and stuff like that that you can click to some studies and stuff. Interesting stuff. I breezed through those links. I didn't really read them. But let's. Oh, sorry. I need to. So let's take a look at the law. So right here is what the law says in section 43, and this has not been changed. It says every school teacher, parent, or person standing in place of a parent is justified in using force by way of correction towards a pupil or child, as the case may be, who is under his care if the force does not exceed what is reasonable under the circumstances. So essentially, yes, you can hit your child so long as it's reasonable under those circumstances. You can hit your student so long as it's reasonable under those circumstances. If you're looking after your friend's child, you could hit the child, you know, so long as it's reasonable, or use some sort of force. That's what this law says, and that's why they want to change it. It's very well, it's very open to a lot of bad possibilities, and people will claim this as part of their defense because that's exactly what they would do, right? Now, with that, excluding, because a lot of people also don't know about this, just like I didn't, in 2004, there was a Supreme Court of Canada decision regarding Section 43. Now, their decision did not change the law. It put in, let's say, understandings that if a person was to claim Section 43 when they went to court, this would then be the guidelines that they'd be looking at. And unfortunately, it's up to you to know this, in the case that you ever get into trouble or before you get yourself into trouble, right? And okay, so we're just going to read through this of the following guidelines that the Supreme Court of Canada in 2004 decided on. Parents and caregivers can only use corrective force or physical punishment that is minor or transitory and trifling in nature. For example, spanking or slapping a child hard enough that it leaves a mark or bruise would not be considered transitory and trifling, and would not be considered reasonable. Now that makes sense, right? I don't think, like, I'm not a big fan of anyone hitting anyone. I'm not a big fan of violence in nature. Um, I don't partake in it at all because I just don't think it's necessary in a lot of senses. Now I've been on the receiving end of it, of course, but I believe that it was reasonable. What I was, you know, when I was a child, right? I was a hard child to punish. Let's just leave it at that. So when we're looking at this, it's like, okay, well, that makes sense because if you're leaving marks or bruises, then that's an issue, right? Okay, so teachers cannot use force or physical punishment under any circumstance. So this right here would then go and remove this from the law. But because the law has not been amended to be able to remove the school teacher part, people may think that they can do things that they actually can't do, right? So teachers cannot use physical force or punishment under any circumstance. Teachers may be permitted to use reasonable force towards a child in circumstances such as to remove a child from a classroom. So that would be, for example, picking up the child and carrying them out of and carrying them out of the room or whatever. It might be grabbing them by the arm and pulling them, maybe, and stuff like that. But literally grabbing the child and ripping them around by the arm would not be allowed. Hitting the child to make them conform to what you're doing would not be allowed, right? It's not really, I mean, it's pretty direct and also kind of vague on what a teacher could do in appropriate circumstances to remove a child from a classroom, but I would assume it would be sort of like grabbing more so by the hand or the wrist and leading the child out of the room, or if you're able to, because some, depending on the age of the child, picking them up and physically plopping them outside the room, right? I've seen that in the past when I was a child, and that might have actually happened to me. I mean, yeah, that might have happened to me. Okay, so punishment cannot be used on children younger than 2 years old, which 100% makes sense, or older than 12 years old. Not sure why that threshold is important there. I might have to do something with puberty, maybe. I'm not sure. You let me know what you think down in the comments, because I'm not sure why 12 years old would be the cap. Like, some people may think it should be 10. Some people might think it should be 14, right? Somewhere around there. But let me know what you think down in the comments. Anyways, and it says physical punishment cannot be used on children younger than 2 years. Oh, I just read that. Sorry. Physical punishment cannot be used on a child in anger or in retaliation for something a child did. That right there is, for the most part, why a child would be punished. If the child broke something and because they're being a dumbass, I've been there. That was me who was the dumbass. So I'm not saying anything, but if I was running around and my mom told me to stop and I didn't stop and I kept going and she kept telling me to stop and eventually I broke something that meant something to her, well, that's when it would, like, so, but she can't use that in retaliation. So this is where it's like, it makes no sense. It's like you put in these amendments, but it doesn't really make sense in those regards. But it's all there to protect the child. I guess then it can be argued in court, right? It gives more, like, really strong arguments that of whatever. Anyways, let's continue on. Objects such as belts or rulers must never be used on a child, and a child must never be hit or slapped in the face or head. 100%, I agree with that. I just agree with that. I've been there. I don't think it was my mom. I think, actually, I don't know. I mean, yeah, I was a difficult child, like I said. Anyways, any use of force on a child cannot be degrading, inhumane, or result in harm or the prospect of harm. Again, like it makes sense, but it seems like they're sort of like writing over the past. The one up here is being rewritten by this one, sort of thing. I mean, hey, I might be reading this wrong. It's early in the morning. It's 2 in the morning, so I woke up early. So you let me know what you think about these. Physical punishment cannot be used on a child who is incapable of learning from the situation because of a disability or some other factor. 100% agree with that. Yeah, I just agree with that. There's nothing really else to say about that. The seriousness of a child's misbehavior is not related to deciding whether the force used was reasonable. The force used must be minor no matter what the child did. So, that's sort of like just a recap of everything. So if you're going to use force, it needs to be mild no matter what. And yeah, to a point, I kind of agree with that for sure. Um, but yeah, and then is spanking illegal? Technically, it's not. Um, let's see what it says. It could be illegal. Depending on the circumstance, spanking can be illegal. And that'd just be looking at these other things up here. So essentially, I hope everyone's okay with this video. I found this very interesting at the time when I was looking at it. And essentially, I just, yeah, I'm sorry this video went so long. Yeah, I, I'm just really tired. It's been an interesting week. We'll go with that. So, anyways, you guys have yourself a wonderful day, and let me know what you think down in the comments in regards to the laws that never got changed and also the 2004 decision. Now, I'm going to put the links to both of these in the description, so feel free to browse them and then leave a comment and let me know what you think. Have a wonderful day.